Welcome to Occult of Personality, esoteric podcast extraordinaire. I'm your host, Greg Kaminsky. In episode number 209, we're joined by Hermetic magician Alexander Heringhaus, who also is the proprietor of the Nettle's Garden website at theoldcraft.com. For a wonderful chat about his path of Hermetic magic, the significance of his website, and much, much more. Occult of Personality podcast is made possible by you, the listeners, and by the subscribers to chamberofreflection.com, our membership site, who aids us in the cause of informed, authentic, and accessible interviews about Western esotericism. Thank you again. Because of your support, we're able to bring you recordings of this caliber and many more to come. Anathema Publishing Limited. Quality occult books and contemporary esoterica. Established in 2011, Anathema Publishing aims to provide superior literature in content and form by creating a trinosophic relationship in troth and gabo between publisher, author, and reader. Anathema Publishing produces refined books for the true bibliophile on topics ranging from Gnosticism, traditional craft, alchemy, Hermeticism, witchcraft, to Luciferian theosophy. www.anathemapublishing.com. Now, in episode number 209, an interview with Hermetic magician and the creator of the website Nettle's Garden at theoldcraft.com, described as dedicated to witchcraft, hermetics, magic, and alchemy, featuring the biographies of occult personalities, interviews, and articles written by practitioners for practitioners. You may recall that theoldcraft.com featured an interview with yours truly in September of 2020. During the course of that interview and over the following months, I've had extensive discussions with Alexander Heringhaus about Nettle's Garden, his intention behind this website, the way he interviews practitioners, as well as talking in depth about his own path of Hermetic magic. It was a real pleasure to have the time and space to conduct the pre-interview conversations and the interview itself, which occurred over the course of a few months and several recordings. That was one among many of the things I appreciated about Alexander. He has a definite aim and intention, but there was never any rush. The time we took allowed for us to become more comfortable, to share more, and to understand each other better. This in and of itself was a significant teaching for me on the nature of magic, time, and patience. Even though I've been doing interviews for this podcast for almost 20 years now, Alexander still taught me a lot about how I can still be better at it, and that was refreshing. And I hope you enjoy this wonderful chat as much as we did. The intro music is Awakening by Paul Avgerinos, and the outro music is Paradigm Shift by Matt Vanden Heuvel. So Alexander, I want to welcome you to Occult of Personality podcast. Thank you for joining us. It's a pleasure to speak with you again, and I appreciate your time and willingness to discuss your esoteric path with us.
Hi, Greg. Thank you for having me here. Nice to meet you again.
So I want to begin by asking you how you became interested in the occult. When did you get involved with it, and sort of what it was that really sparked that interest?
Well, I have been interested in things like this probably all my life, as far as I can remember. Yet there's a certain point in time. So my childhood was mostly normal. I was a normal kid, but I was always interested in like mythology, things like this, and especially vampires, which were a favorite topic of mine since elementary school, like first class even. And when I was 12, I was reading a monography on vampires, and there I stumbled upon the words black magic. And it was not even important for this kind of book and for the book itself. But in this moment, it was like, okay, yeah, sure, this is what I need. It was like I was sleeping or I was doing something, had forgotten what I've done. And in this moment, I remembered everything and started to resume it. So in the next days, I went to the local library. I found a book which was also named in German Black Magic. In English, it has a more fitting name. I sense it's The Black Arts by Richard Cavendish, which is a very nice overview on Western esotericism, occultism, and classical magic. So I started to read this book and take it from there. So I was interested in more books of magic, ritual magic. I was interested in Aleister Crowley, obviously. I read the Liber Al. I tried my first practical things. They were not big successes at that time. I tried to meditate, and things developed from there. But probably I was already 14 when I got my first real magical curriculum. It was Dolores Ashcroft Nowicki, Magical Rituals, or the Magical Ritual Workbook. It's a very nice book. I like it as an introduction into the Western magical tradition. So it's like a 1-year program and with different meditation rituals and gradually developing skills in this area. On the other hand, this was a great book which sparkled my interest quite a lot. But I was 16 when I really started to practice seriously every day, like 2 to 4 hours. And at this time, I was starting to focus more on Franz Bardon. Rather than ritual magic, at first for really practical reasons. I lived with my parents. I had my children room, of course, but I had no real space for a dedicated temple. I could use it such, and so ritual magic was not necessarily so easy to do. And here I sensed the meditations or the magical program, as by Franz Bardon, for example, was much more at the ready. Nowadays, I even find this much better. I'm not really into ritual magic and ropes and all this stuff. I consider it best to do everything just with your mind. It does not mean that I don't do ritual at all, but I think it's a very good idea if you can work without tools.
Thank you. That's really interesting to hear, and not the way I expected you to end that introduction. So let's explore that just for a moment. What is that about, this sort of preference that you have?
I'm not sure if it's a preference or not. Well, for me, it probably is. I just got used to it. If you ask me what I'm doing classical Western Hermetics. So, and for me, Franz Bardon is the best known example in this direction.
Right.
This is why I'm telling about him. When I was 18, I found my personal teacher, and I learned a lot from him. So I'm not practicing right now, and since then the classical Bardon system. But from everything which is known, this is probably the most appropriate or nearest system. So on the one hand, you have the classical Hermetic worldview. You find it already with Agrippa. You find parts of it with Pico della Mirandola. You find it with Abraham from Worms, a lot of things. You find it partly in the scriptures of the Rosicrucians. And you find it later, obviously, in German occultism or also the English-speaking occultism. Like you have the 4 elements, the 7 planets, and so on. A lot of spirits to work with. On the other hand, there's a really nice program how to develop magical skills, and it's universal because it's not tied to a certain religion or anything, which is very nice in my opinion. So it is open for everyone to practice, whether you are religious or not religious at all. For example, I'm from a family where religion played no role at all. My mother read a lot, or both my parents, but my mother especially, had a lot of books on mythology, like Greek and especially Egypt and Northern mythology. So these were things I read as a child out of pleasure. But otherwise, with organized religion, or especially Christianity, I had no contact except for school, and I did not like it. I don't like it until today. So for me, this universal system, for example, is much more appealing than Rosicrucian things or the Golden Dawn, which at the end of the day is still full with Christian symbolism. You can strip it from there. I know a lot of practitioners who do it, and who don't have any problem with this, who are also not Christian, and can practice this very well. But for me, for example, it was very nice to have a universal system which does not make any religious references at all. So, and the same for rituals. So the Bardon system is you can develop your own rituals over time, and you will obviously do it. But the thing you are working with the most is your consciousness. So, and for me, this is a big plus.
Thank you. Yeah, that just really, really interesting. I can certainly appreciate the sort of non-religious tradition that the Bardon system uses, and engaging with that more mystical aspect of Hermetic, I think is certainly appreciated by me, and I'm sure people listening as well. Yeah, that's really fascinating. And I know in the second half of this interview, we'll talk more about your interest in Bardon for sure. I guess if you don't mind, I'd like to talk a bit about your project, Nettle's Garden, The Old Craft, at theoldcraft.com, which is really a wonderful resource and place to explore interviews with occult practitioners, researchers, teachers. There's a lot of interesting articles that you've written, and I feel like it's unique, and I guess what I'd like to say about it is I feel like when I visit your website, not only am I getting really in-depth information and knowledge, but I'm also get the feeling of like being transported back in time slightly to a kinder, friendlier World Wide Web, where things were more open, and I don't know, it felt like each website was a little environment where you would go and kind of inhabit that place for a while and it had its own feeling, and that's what you've got there. And I feel like in a lot of ways we've lost that with the web. But anyway, tell us about the old craft.
Well, thank you for your nice words. It's pleasant to hear this, and this kind of feeling you describe is actually the feeling this project should also transmit, not only for the readers, but also for me. It started by chance, completely by chance. So, and first it was named Nettle's Garden. Why Nettle's Garden? Because this is how it started, by chance. I got a friend for over 20 years. She's an artist from Mexico. And then some, 6 or 7 years ago, she became interested in craft, like working with hands, not only painting, and especially doll making. And one day, like 4 or 5 years ago, I checked my social media and I see some photos of a witch doll, which looks just amazing. It looks like nearly real, and just like a witch should look like, but completely unique. And I was just, okay, I want this doll. I write to her, please sell me this doll. I want this. And she said, okay, sure. But it's yours. But when it arrives in Moscow, send me a picture with the witch doll on the Red Square. Okay, deal done. The witch doll arrives, and the witch doll, she looked like real. A little bit, like there was life to it. And I say, okay, cool. I take her to the Red Square, make some pictures there, make some pictures at the Basilica, and they turn out really nice. I share them with my friend, and we decide, okay, let's put them on Instagram. So we put some pictures on Instagram. People start to like them, or not people, occultists, and mostly witches, obviously. So they start to like them, and I was thinking, okay, cool, I like this. Let's make more of this. Because of my profession or my lifestyle, I travel a lot. I fly a lot, or at least used to fly a lot before Corona. So I take the witch doll in several places, make pictures with her in nice environments, different environments, and start to post them on Instagram together with some parts of the Edda. For me, this was a nice activity to during my day job. Obviously, I practice every day, but I'm a solitary practitioner and always have been. And it was a nice way for me to connect every day a little bit with other occultists. So the Instagram channel was mostly about this. At some point of time, I thought, okay, cool, maybe it would be nice also to make a blog. Meanwhile, some witches invited me into their witch channels, and I started talking to different people, which reminded me, by the way, of my first job. When I was 16, I was starting to work in an occult library or in a bookshop in our city. So we were serving a large region, and I was getting to know magicians, occultists, esotericists, Buddhists or otherwise spiritual people and witches from all over the area. It helped me also to connect with people from other parts of Germany, because I just could call them from work, and if they were somehow like having their own publishing house or so. There were several forms of interaction. And I was working there for like 3 or 4 years. I enjoyed this very much, this area. And this kind of contact with all these interesting people. And later, when I was moving to Frankfurt, I was very often visiting Walter Engler in his famous bookshop Occulta. Walter Engler was a direct student of Gregorius, the great master of the Fraternitas Saturni, probably Germany's most important or well-known magical order. And he was himself the leader of the German OTO over the Reuss line. I was never involved in any kind of group, but we were good friends. I was visiting him there very often, like nearly every weekend. And Fridays, Saturdays, we were just sitting there chatting and meeting other interesting people, talking about all times. Well, he obviously more than me. I was more talking about the new time. So there were places where you could meet and where people meet and met. Then there came the time when Amazon came. Amazon closed a lot of bookshops, and those places got less and less, unfortunately. And for me, this thing with the social media and later with the website was that I was looking, for me at least, a little bit for a way to reconnect with other people interested in the occult in a way which is, on the one hand, educational, meaningful, but maybe also socially interesting, and transmit this feeling of a personal touch, being connected, being part of something, maybe not being alone on the way, or having somebody you can talk to when on your way, or when you just want to know more. So I was like some years ago, I don't even know, I think 3 years ago, I was opening the website, and the first name was also Nettle's Garden. It was sort of like the witch is there, the main point, because obviously on the Instagram channel, the witch was the only important figure. And so the website should start also around her image. However, on the other hand, I'm not a witch. I never practiced witchcraft, even though I had a lot of friends, or have a lot of friends which do. I also like the witches. They are very nice people to me. But on the other hand, I'm not good to write about witchcraft, and it soon turned out that the things I can write about, are Hermetics and Magick. And after some time, this started to become an important audience. Witchcraft is also important. We had certain people writing there about witchcraft occasionally. I still have and had interviews recently with the Museum of Witchcraft and Magic, with the people from Troy Books, which is a publishing house from the UK, which I appreciate a lot, practically or mostly publish witchcraft, or what they call traditional witchcraft. They started a musical project, which is very nice and which I like a lot, Morvoren. I hope I pronounced it right. So I had an interview with them, like occult art. And so witchcraft will remain important, but I thought, it's not only about witchcraft, it's about hermetics, it's about alchemy, it's about magic in general. And so we need to find different angle to it, or a new name for it. And this is why I started like 1 year or 2 years ago to rename it into theoldcraft.com, because I feel this is a kind of name most people interested in the occult can connect with. It's fitting even for Masons, probably. It's fitting for the witches. It's fitting for the ritual magicians. So this is how I renamed the blog.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I certainly appreciate the sort of journey that you took to create it, and also the sort of interest in witchcraft, but not being from a practitioner's perspective, because I feel like I share that on some level with you. not personally, of course, but I have that same interest. I worked in a couple of different witch shops in Salem, and I definitely felt that sort of interest in the connection with nature, the seasons, the cycles, the use of all sorts of natural substances, and a perspective that was, really quite engaging, I think. But I really do appreciate your website, and even as I was thinking about it the other day and going through some of the different interviews, it is wide ranging, and I like the fact that there's a variety of different types of practices and perspectives that are offered. And I've, tried to do something similar. But I'm curious what you think of as some of your favorite interviews on the site. And not to put you on the spot too much, but for me personally, I'd have to say your recent interview with Daniel Hornfischer about alchemy was probably my favorite, just because the subject is so close. But I'm curious what some of your favorites have been.
Well, it's hard for me to pick a favorite because all interviews which are there have something I like a lot. This is why they are there. Having said this, the website was not in its final form from day one, and it probably is not in its final form. I had very few time in the last 2.5-3 years to work on it. So we don't see many updates right now, but I hopefully in the next year the situation will change a little bit. So I'm very busy with my day job, and I also became a father. This takes a lot of time and energy, but it's very nice. But getting back to your question, so at the beginning we had not only interviews. I had there also a lot of articles, so articles on occult personalities. This is something I like a lot to do. And here there are 2 articles which for me are like a standard I want to see in the future. This is on the one hand the article on Aleister Crowley's Liber Alver, which turned out quite nice in my opinion, and the other one is on Florence Farr. So it's a biography of Florence Farr, the Golden Dawn magician. Those 2 are articles where I say, okay, they turn really out nicely. This is a standard I want to see on this website in the future and to maintain. I also had some shorter things like occult art. For example, we have here the first Walpurgis Night, a cantata by Felix Mendelssohn Bartholdy, and a poem by Johann Wolfgang von Goethe. So it's not really written by me, just an introduction and put there into context, which is, I think, also nice. But then I started to create also more interviews. And here I liked all interviews, including the interview with you. And I always chose my interview partner after the question, okay, what is there to learn? What would I like to know additional to all the information I already got? So the people I interviewed usually are people I have read their books, if they have, or I know their work, I'm familiar with them, but I still have questions, and I think it makes sense to have a conversation about what they are doing. And Daniel Hornfischer here is a great example. So Daniel Hornfischer is an alchemist, a German alchemist who published, I think, over 20 years ago, a book on alchemy, which was sold out in no time and is now selling for crazy prices, like 300, 400 euros or so to get. It's probably also the only esoteric book ever to receive a Goethe Prize. It's a unique doorway to alchemy. Alchemy, for me personally, for a long time, has been a hard topic. I'm well versed in Magick, Kabbalah, and all this, but with alchemy, it was always a little bit hard for me to find the interest. Symbolism is somehow very similar, but somehow very different at the beginning, and overall very confusing. And Daniel Hornfischer just gives a short introduction to alchemy in his book, and then he always takes old classical texts and reads them with you and makes you to understand these old original texts and shows you already in the first 100 pages of the book how to make your first alchemical works, and takes you through the book to a more complex alchemical work, including always maintaining this unique style of all text explanation and hints to go further with own practice. So I thought it would be really interesting to have an interview with him. He was very open to it, and the interview is probably also very good because he really wanted to share something. So he put a lot of effort in the interview. We were working on the interview not in one day, but on many days. The whole process was taking several weeks with our conversations and back and forth. And so it's one of the interviews I'm very happy about, and where I feel, okay, Daniel Hornfischer is really trying, or in my opinion, not only trying, but successfully in transmitting something of his knowledge through this interview. So this is definitely a good thing. The interview with Wilma Tarr on the GNOME manuscript, it was just interesting for me. So it was out of curiosity. And I think it's an interesting work as a kind of historian he's doing there. He puts a lot of love into his books, and it was interesting seeing him at the book launch. So it came in handy to make an interview with him here. We have this interview, or had this interview recently with Simon Costin, the director of the Museum of Witchcraft and Magic, who tells a lot about the history of the museum. You can obviously read a lot about the history of the museum, and I did this before. So I tried actually in the interview to make a short summary of the history and then to go into questions which I have afterwards, or which I seem interesting. Also, I find the museum very interesting as one of those places where you can go, and I want to go there. It was actually planned for last year, but Corona made some changes to this plan. So hopefully at the end of this year, or at least next year, this will happen. But I've met him before, also on the book launch party from Wilma Tarr. And then we re-met for the interview. So it was really nice to learn more about the work with this Witchcraft and Magic Museum, the plans for the future, how can you support it, also how you can benefit from it. They have, for example, a library where you can, I think they have over 6,000 books on magic and occultism. So, and they have obviously a great setting. So, and More Warren, Music for the Devil, is the last interview we had. It's with Gemma Gary, which is an author on traditional witchcraft, quite popular from the UK, Anna Dowling and Jane Cox. Jane Cox is a publisher at Troy Books together with Gemma, and Anna is new to the whole setup. So they made a band and put some invocations from Gamma Gary's work, The Devil's Dozen, into music, which is fascinating. I love this music a lot. My newborn daughter grew up listening to some of those pieces every evening. She likes it at the music going to sleep and nice dreaming. And I found it beneficial or interesting for other people to get aware of this project. So, and obviously there's this interview with you, which was also very interesting. I mean, we had several talks before and even after the interview. And as I said, it's something I wanted, for me at least, but also for the readers, to recreate with this website or this blog, this feeling there are people who have interesting things to say. You can talk to them, you can meet them, and they are sharing a little bit of their knowledge.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting, the process that you used, and being able to have such in-depth conversations and explorations of these ideas. It was really different and refreshing. I mean, I interview people, and even my interview process is nowhere near as in-depth and expansive as yours is. So, from one interviewer to another, I have a lot of respect for the way that you do this, because I know that it takes a tremendous amount of patience and discipline. And, it, at least for our interview, like, we must have spoken half dozen times or communicated by email. And by the time we were finished with the interview and the conversations, I felt like I had gotten to know you a little bit. And here we are talking again. And this is not the first time we've talked since then, of course. So I think it was really interesting, and I appreciated the opportunity, because I think what you've done and what you're doing is really quite rare, even in this realm.
Well, I'm glad you say this, and I hope in the future I will have more time for it. But we'll see.
Yes.
I definitely have some plans on what interviews I want to take next, or what to write about next. So, but if I'm managing to do 2 this year, I will be happy.
I can definitely understand that. I'm wondering, and I think you've kind of touched on this already, but it sounds like, from the combination of your esoteric practices, your interactions with other practitioners, and creating the website, not only are you continually striving for ever greater growth and success, in your spiritual life, but also obviously in your career, in your family life. And it seems like this is something that is not something that is, just occurring by chance. You've made it habitual. Is that right?
Probably yes. This growth was always important for me, and is probably also one of the biggest motivators behind all this. At the end of the day, if you put a lot of time and effort in something, there should also be a question: why are you doing this? And for me, Magick, okay, I just felt drawn to it. It was like just natural for me to do it, and unnatural not to do it, but still I always ask myself the question, why I'm doing this, what is this good for? The answers maybe changed also over the course of time, and there's always probably for most this moment when the difference between magic, mysticism, or spirituality blurs, and everything becomes just one. And I think it's not only this, also personal life, family, career becomes also part of all this. It's all one. I don't feel a difference between all these aspects of life. It's a way of approaching to it. And if we come back to the website, I have seen in the last years, I don't know if it's a really if it's a trend, or if it's just me who just read a little bit much in this direction, but it seems to me that there's a trend like to get to academic standards when writing about occultism, and to give it an academic touch. Obviously, I'm an academic myself. I was at university not only once, but several times, and I have several degrees. On the other hand, for me, I don't find this academic approach to occultism fruitful for several reasons. First, academic working or science is mostly a method. It's not that it's about reliability, replicable, or anything. Science and scientific working is about a certain method, and this method means that you share your way of working, your results, and all your presumption, your hypothesis openly. But it's nearly impossible in the occult, or if writing about occultists, other occultists, to work like this, because occult books, they are full of obscure things. They are authors are leaving out intentionally important things, changing the order of things, don't mention things which don't belong there, just to confuse the reader, and or the reader who is not capable to grasp a certain phenomena, but still talk to those who can sort things out by themselves. They don't write down everything which is important. They maybe even burn their manuscripts and things like this. So it's really hard here to have a sensible academic approach to a subject which is like this. This is why I decided for the website. Okay, personally, I think it's important to work scientifically where you can and where this makes sense. But for the website, I'm focusing here on the feeling, on transferring knowledge for practitioners, or from practitioners for other practitioners, and leave all other questions out. So this was for me an important decision regarding this website, and maybe this is also something you are feeling when you're interacting with it.
I think so. I'm just mindful of our time here, but I'm curious if this is just sort of a non-personal question, but do you have any insights or opinions about the ways that it seems like, to me, having been involved in esoteric activities for, I don't know, closing in on 2 decades, I guess, which for some people is not a long time. But it seems like when I first sort of became aware, there was more a spirit of community and acceptance of people's differences, whether those were inherent differences or whether those were just opinions and beliefs that people held. But over time, that seems to be changing, where people seem less tolerant of differences, and this seems to actually be affecting relations within the esoteric community or communities, as it were. And I'm wondering, do you have any thoughts about this, or do you notice this, or, maybe you disagree completely. So I'm just curious what your thoughts are.
It's definitely a trend I see myself, but not only in esoteric communities. I see it like everywhere in society and also globally. Global means a lot. I'm not that global, but in several countries of Europe, like Western Europe and Eastern Europe, I see the same. And interestingly, Eastern Europe is here catching up very fast and becoming also judgmental, as I call it often, or more political or otherwise correct, if you want to take it like this. So it's a general trend I see everywhere in society, and probably it's just grasping over. Sometimes it's not bad because some of those things are good, but oftentimes I feel like things are going overboard and people are taking things way too serious and are actually damaging personal relationships rather than helping them.
Yeah, I guess from my perspective, what I observe is a decrease in kindness and compassion. And that is like across the board. I'm not saying there's any one group or one persuasion that does this. I feel like it is escalating. And I don't want to assign blame or anything because I'm not sure that's really helpful, and not what I'm trying to talk about specifically. But I just would like to see people being more considerate or kind or compassionate to one another and to themselves. And really, to me, that's part of what esoteric practice is all about. But, in conversations with you, I feel like your practice has certainly made you into that sort of a person, if you weren't already.
Well, my practice definitely helped with it. I also had a lot of good role models in my life, and many of them I met on my esoteric path, which is like this. So at the end of the day, I think things are falling here together. Normal life, esoteric life start at some point. It should start to blur.
Yes.
And to fall together.
Yeah, I agree. Do you have any final thoughts or advice or anything you want to leave the listeners with regarding your own spiritual path, your website, Nettle's Garden, the Old Craft, or any future projects you might have?
Well, for the future, I definitely want to work more on the website. So even if it will not be necessarily this year or the next year, for the future, I still plan to do something there and maybe also to share a little bit of what I have done. At the moment, I don't feel like I want to actively share a certain thing or be a teacher for something or a pastor or so. This is not what I have in mind, but I would definitely to get more involved in this kind of work, getting different kind of knowledge together, connecting people in this regard, or making knowledge accessible from practitioners for other practitioners. I think in the second part of the interview, we are talking about practical things. There will be some advice for practitioners or how I have done or seen things. There will be some book recommendations, and we can take it from there.
Certainly. Yeah, thank you. And yes, in that second half of the interview, we will be getting into some very practical advice, talking a lot about Franz Bardon and his work and how you have worked with his system quite extensively. And for me, that's a real treat because you give us some real insight into how the Bardon system is really just so effective, I think. And I'm very certain that people will appreciate that a lot. I know I did. So I hope people will tune in for that in the Chamber of Reflection or at the Occult of Personality Patreon. So Alexander, I want to thank you again for joining us here on the podcast. It's great to speak with you and get some insight into your journey as well as your website. Again, Nettle's Garden, The Old Craft, at theoldcraft.com. Really, I have to say, one of my favorite, if not favorite, occult websites at this point in time. So I'm looking forward to new material. But until then, you have such a wealth of articles and interviews here that anyone will be kept busy for a long time. So I would encourage people to check out your website and indulge themselves. So thank you again for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Have a good day.
Yes, you as well. Alexander Heringhaus has been studying the occult, Hermeticism, and ceremonial magic for many, many years. Alexander's esoteric practice has taken a prominent place in his life, so much so that he accomplished working through Franz Bardon's initiation into Hermetics. Heringhaus shares his experiences and insights into this path with us in a very special second half of the interview, available to members of the Chamber of Reflection at chamberofreflection.com and our patrons at patreon.com/occult of personality. Be sure to listen to that amazing interview. I'd like to remind you that although you're able to listen to this podcast at no charge, it costs time and money to create. We ask you to support our efforts and the creation of future podcasts by joining the membership section at chamberofreflection.com or subscribing via Patreon at patreon.com/occult of personality. And if you're already supporting the show or have done so in the past, my heartfelt thanks, and I salute you.